In 1692, a wave of fear swept through the small Puritan community of Salem, Massachusetts. Dozens were accused of witchcraft. 19 were hanged. Others died in the cold, damp cells of the jail. For centuries, we have been told a simple story that this was an isolated outbreak of mass hysteria, a dark chapter of religious fanaticism and superstition. But behind the chaos, behind the screaming and the accusations, lies something far more deliberate, something manipulated and controlled. The official story is a cautionary tale. The truth is a conspiracy. This is the forbidden story behind the Salem witch trials. Court transcripts from the trial survive to this day, but they are incomplete. They contain gaps, entire sections torn from the bindings, names redacted with heavy ink, full pages inexplicably missing. Historians have long dismissed these as accidents of time, the natural decay of old documents. But that is not the whole truth. Some of these documents were intentionally removed generations later, when the trials were re-examined and the official narrative was being cemented. Key testimonies were silenced long after the victims were. The question is not what was lost to time, but what was actively hidden. Why would anyone censor events already condemned by history? What was in those missing pages that someone, even centuries later, did not want the world to see? We've been taught that the testimonies were filled with irrational claims of spectral attacks and pacts with the devil. But buried within the court records are anomalies accounts that don't fit the simple narrative of hysteria. Witnesses described strange, unexplained lights hovering over the fields at night. They reported sudden, bizarre illnesses that struck down entire families in a matter of hours, with symptoms that baffled the local physicians. They documented animal behavior so erratic it was considered an omen. These testimonies were not embraced. They were quietly set aside, ignored by the magistrates and later by historians, because they introduced a layer of mystery that complicated the convenient explanation of simple, uneducated panic. These were not tales of witches flying on broomsticks. They were reports of tangible, observable phenomena that no one could explain. To truly understand what happened in Salem, you must look beyond the courtroom drama and into the political climate that no one talks about. In the years leading up to 1692, Salem was a community tearing itself apart. Bitter land disputes between powerful families had been simmering for decades. Religious factions battled for control of the church, with a deep rift between the town and the outlying village. Power struggles were constant, and in this environment, the witch trials became a weapon. A closer look reveals a startling pattern. Many of the accused were individuals who owned valuable property, or who stood in the way of the ambitions of others. Many of the accusers, particularly the powerful Putnam family, stood to gain socially, politically, and economically from the convictions. The trials were not chaos. They were an opportunity, a brutal and efficient tool for settling old scores and consolidating power under the righteous cloak of religious purity. The official record shows a series of public hearings and trials, but what it doesn't show are the secret meetings. Surviving private journals and letters from the period make veiled references to private gatherings held between the magistrates, the ministers, and the most influential families in Salem. These meetings took place in the dead of night, before key arrests were made and before crucial decisions were announced. No official minutes were kept. No records of what was discussed have ever been found. It was in these shadowy councils, away from the public eye, that the fate of the accused was truly decided. The courtroom was merely the stage. The script was written behind closed doors. At the very center of the storm were the afflicted girls, the young accusers whose fits and visions ignited the entire ordeal. They have been portrayed as innocent victims, impressionable children swept up in a tide of fear. But this portrait is incomplete. Later accounts and even some suppressed testimonies from the time suggest a darker origin. Some of the girls were not merely passive victims. They had been practicing forbidden rituals, folk magic taught to them by Tituba, the enslaved woman in Reverend Parris's household, and potentially others. Their detailed knowledge of certain symbols, their coordinated behaviors, and their uncanny ability to name specific people raised profound questions. Were their episodes genuine hysterical fits, or were they performing, using knowledge of the occult to manipulate a terrified community? What truly triggered their afflictions was not fear, but something they had willingly invited. The deception continues even after death. The official logs of the executions do not align cleanly with the burial records. 19 people were hanged on Gallows Hill, their bodies denied a Christian burial and unceremoniously dumped in a shallow, unmarked crevice. Yet for some of these individuals there is no confirmed grave. Their bodies were said to have been secretly retrieved by their families in the dead of night, but their final resting places remain a mystery. Other records show individuals listed as executed who have burial sites located far from Salem, suggesting their families fled with their bodies. These discrepancies are more than just historical footnotes. They hint that the official story was being altered even as it unfolded, that some narratives were managed, rewritten, or completely erased to maintain control. To find the puppet master, one must look to the pulpit. Reverend Samuel Parris, the minister of Salem Village, was a central figure in the trials. His own daughter and niece were among the first accusers. But what is often omitted from the story is that Parris was a deeply divisive and unpopular figure, embroiled in financial disputes with his congregation long before the accusations began. Several of the first people accused of witchcraft were his known critics, individuals who had openly challenged his authority and his salary. His sermons became fire and brimstone, intensifying the fear and paranoia, framing the conflict not as a community dispute, but as a cosmic battle between God and Satan. Historians now believe he did more than just preach. He coached the accusers, influenced key testimonies, and used the crisis to silence his enemies and solidify his own precarious position. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. In the autumn of 1692, the hysteria stopped. The same leaders and magistrates who had enthusiastically encouraged the trials, who had accepted spectral evidence without question, suddenly reversed course. They declared the evidence invalid and began dismissing cases. The governor stepped in and disbanded the special court. But why? What changed overnight? Was it a crisis of conscience? Or was there external pressure? Did the accusations begin to target people too powerful, the wives of governors and wealthy merchants? No official explanation for the sudden halt was ever given. The machine of death was simply switched off, leaving a silence more chilling than the accusations themselves. This leaves us with the final, unavoidable question. Were the Salem witch trials truly a spontaneous eruption of mass panic, or a calculated purge orchestrated by a few for the benefit of themselves? Were the victims accused of imaginary crimes born of superstition, Or did they witness something real, something the authorities refused to investigate and chose to eliminate instead? History remembers the fear. It remembers the hangings and the accusations, but it conveniently forgets the agenda. It forgets the missing pages, the secret meetings, and the political machinations that turned a town's anxiety into a tool of destruction. The truth of Salem is not just in what we know, but in what has been deliberately hidden from us. If you are ready to uncover more forbidden history and question the narratives you've been given, subscribe to the True Story Files. Let us know in the comments what you believe truly fueled the Salem witch trials. Was it hysteria, or was it a conspiracy? Thanks for watching.